Hello everyone, in today's video we will allow our players to use a car. We will do all of this with free assets and a short and simple script. I would definitely recommend better animations and a better script, but I am using all of these free ones so anyone can follow along. The goal here is to have a player enter a car, then switch player controllers, have the player exit and switch back. In order to create this we will need Unity, Game Creator, and everything I've added in the description. So let's dive in. Now, before we set up our scene, I want to show what we're actually doing here. So the player you are using can just be a literal stock default player. The scene doesn't matter at all. All actions are on the car object itself. So it doesn't really matter what you're using. I would recommend, if you want to follow along, downloading all of the assets and the script linked in the description. We will be using this for the demo. They're free, so obviously they're not all the best, but they're quite good for, well, considering they're free, really. So once we get close to the car, we will be able to see this message. This message activates at the same time as actually entering. Now, this is not some nice animated car, so it doesn't look the best. But now we're actually using the car controller instead of the normal player controller. And yeah, we're driving along. Nice. Once I press the same button again, we'll get out. And like I mentioned, the animations aren't perfectly timed or anything like that. I just wanted to show that, we're able to do this and it all works. That's the goal here. Now, if you're using, for example, Horse Animation Pro set. I don't have that, but I've seen that it's quite popular. I'm pretty sure you'd be able to use these same steps to actually activate all of those scripts and animations. So let's get started. So I will be using this scene. Doesn't really matter what scene you're using. Everything we are going to do is related to the car object itself, so you can just have a default player. Honestly, it doesn't matter at all. Now, I want to highlight that before we get started, you've made sure you've downloaded this asset, or you already have another car asset, which is fine as well. And you've downloaded these two animations. Now, the important thing with these animations, so entering and exiting, is that they are rigged to humanoid, otherwise they will not work. So by default they are generic. Make sure you hit humanoid here and press apply. Now, this is not some magical fix that just, changes animations perfectly, but it's the only way this will work. So again, I'd like to highlight, if you have better animations, definitely get those. Now we are going to drag our car in here. I'm going to use static. The license plate is pink, so for some reason that didn't upgrade in HDRP, so don't mind that really. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new camera motor. I'm going to call this car motor. Really simple. It's going to be an adventure camera, really basic. Going to drag in our car here. Let's unpack this prefab. There we go. It's going to be the car, and we're going to be zoomed out a bit more. There we go. Now you can change all of these obviously, but I'm just going to keep it basic here. Next up, we are going to add a rigid body. Now the mass is only 5, which is not a lot, but it serves the purpose. And we are going to add the script I added in the description as well. Now I want to highlight, I am by no means a coder. This is a really basic script I got from a Unity explanation. Basically you drive forwards and backwards and to the sides, and that's it. Really basic. So if you have something better, obviously use that. Now on the car we are going to add two empties. So the first one will be enable enter car, and the second one will be enter car. Now, as you might have guessed, the goal of enable enter car is to enable that object. So we're going to add a simple box glider here. There we go. So this is going to be the area where you'll be able to activate entering the car. So two triggers. First one will be player enter and the second one will be player exit. Both will need a condition. So we are going to turn off this one. That's important. So by default it needs to be turned off. If it's not turned off, walking forward will also move the car along, which is not what we want. So if our car controller is disabled, and that's the same condition we'll use here. There we go. If it's disabled, we are going to activate enter car, and we are going to deactivate enter car. There we go. So really simple, really straightforward. If we enter, this is going to be activated. If we exit, this is going to be disabled. Now enter car will have conditions, etc., but we also want an explanation. The explanation is going to be a simple canvas here. Let me turn that around. There we go. Perfect. Well, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. So simple explanation field. There we go. Let's add a UI image here. No, that's not big enough. There we go. Going to add a text as well. Perfect. And there we have our text. Let's make it 20. There we go. Going to make the text white and the image dark. Yeah, that's about right. It's not perfect, it's not supposed to be. Just now, if you don't want an explanation, obviously you can just skip this step, but I thought it would be useful. Now we're going to add two markers here. So let's add marker 1. Now this is the marker the player will move to inside of the car. There we go, that's about right. So we'll call this marker in. Duplicate that and we'll call this marker out. There we have it, two markers. Now this one is going to need a trigger. So I am using keypad 7, which is one of the weirdest buttons you can use, but I'm sure I'm not using that for something else, so that's why. So obviously, you know, use something better, but just going to play it safe here. I don't know why it added two conditions, but there we go. we need one condition. So what is going to happen once we press 7? So if we're not in the car, we need to get in, and if we are in the car, we need to get out. So the condition is going to be really simple. It's going to rely again on our script. Where are you? Components, there you go. So this component, if it's enabled, the car controller, then something's going to happen. If it's disabled, then something else will happen. So by default, this is disabled. So we're going to start with the condition to get in, which will be the else. So that's the last action. And these are going to be the steps for if we want to get in, basically. Now we're going to use character mount. This is not some magical action that does a lot. Basically it just disables collisions and disables the player controller. But that's what we need right now, so. Now I'm going to use the animation clip, and as you saw in the demo, it definitely doesn't look great or doesn't look perfect, but it's just to show how it works. Obviously that doesn't work. There we go, entering. Next up, we are going to do a transform move. So our player is going to move to our marker. So he's going to move to marker in. Now you can play around with offsets. I think I had him go a bit lower. You can play with rotation, etc. I haven't really tried to make it look all that smooth. I know the animations aren't the best fit. The car door doesn't even open, etc. So just going to keep it really basic here, but if you want to have something better, definitely play around with all of these settings. There we go. So I'm going to give it a second to perform all of these actions before we continue. We are going to change to the new camera here. And I give that a transition time of half a second, which is really not a lot, but it just looks a bit smoother. We are going to make sure the explanation is turned off now. We're already in the car at this point, so we no longer need to see that explanation. And now we need to make sure that the player actually moves along with the object. So the easiest way to do that is just to give it a new parent. This way, if this one moves, the player will move along. Now the player is no longer doing anything, he's just static. Player controller is no longer active, but we want to make sure the guy actually does move along with us. You can change all of these to make it all better and smoother. The moment he gets out, for example, I'm just going to keep it really simple. There we go. Now we need to make sure that our new controller is now active. So this is the first time we're actually going to activate it. I called it car controller, the name of the script, and now we need to activate that. Now we also need to make sure that enter car stays active. Because we get out of that collision box, it will automatically disable enter car, but while we're inside of the car, we need to make sure it's enabled again. So that's why I'm adding this one. And that's it. So next up are the actions for what we're going to do if we're inside of the car and press that button. Now, first thing we're going to do is make sure we're no longer able to drive. So I think that's the most important one here. There we go. Otherwise, we could still be driving while we exit, etc., and have all of those animations. Going to do the exit animation. Now, because I didn't mess around with rotations and making it all look perfect, this is actually not going to look all that amazing, but it's just to show you how to do it, and I'll give it to you to actually perfect the way it looks. Now we are going to do a new transform here. We're going to use the marker of out. Now, the reason I'm using markers and not just using a position is because, well, based on how we're rotated, etc., this X, Y, Z position would be completely different. So that's why we're using transform and the markers, because the markers are children of the actual car, so they will move along depending on where the car is located. I'm sure rotation would make it look all a lot better, but let's just keep it simple here. Going to add another wait of a second just to give it all time to do this. Now I'm going to disable the mounted mode, so we're making sure we can control our player again and collisions are working again. It's important that this happens after this move, otherwise we'll mess with the collision of the actual car. Now we are going to change our camera again. So let's drag in the normal camera, give that the same transition time. And we are going to reset our player state. So we're no longer in the animation, we're back to normal. It's always important to do. And at the same time, explanation will be activated again. And I'm not really sure if I have to add this one again. Yeah. Let's just keep it like this and see what happens. Otherwise, I'll change it. There we go. So these are all of the basic steps we need to perform. So let's actually give this a go. Well, that doesn't look all that great. Guessing that's the mass. This works, yay.
Enemy!
And our guy saw us. But yeah, it's definitely not all perfect. So let's see what we can change here. So first things first, as you might have noticed, our car is actually dragging through the floor. I'm pretty sure this is because we're adding mass and our car doesn't actually have any colliders on the wheels. Now this is going to be a really simple fix. Where are the wheels? There we go. This is not perfect, and it's not, you know, a nice way to have him actually drive if you want to have all of this moving, but it works, so I'm just going to keep it simple. There we go. Let's do the same here with this one. I don't know what happened there. There we go. and the last wheel. Perfect. I have to say, for a free model, this is not bad at all. Not bad at all. Pretty good. Now I think I need it to actually disable once we get outside of the car as well, so let's just do that. Let's make sure this is actually disabled by default. This is not a trigger. That's better. There we go. So once we press 7 right now, we're not entering the car. Once we get there, we enter the car. We drive the car. Really nice. We exit the car again. And as you can see, we can no longer enter the car from a distance either. We have to get close again and we can enter the car again. I'm going to turn the car a bit just to show you what I meant with those markers. And get out now. And obviously rotations would make this look a lot better. Different animations would anyway. But yeah, it's a really basic way, really basic car controller script, but we can actually use a car now, drive around. And I think the key thing here with this is not so much this car controller script, obviously, but it's the fact that you can use this to change player controllers. So if you're using something else, that's a really nice way to do it as well. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.